My family called me a worthless dreamer for leaving my job to start a business. You're throwing your life away, they said. I smiled and said nothing. Now they keep asking me. They laughed when I quit. Not a chuckle. Not a polite cough of concern. No, it was the kind of laughter that feels like a slap across the face. The kind that tells you they don't see your dream, just your failure pre-written. You're throwing your life away, my father said over dinner, his knife tapping on the plate like a gavel. My mother nodded, not even looking up from her peas. You've always been a dreamer, Josh, she added, like it was a disease. It had started 3 weeks before, when I submitted my resignation letter to McAllister and Briggs, a corporate law firm where I'd worked for the last 6 years. My salary was solid, the benefits were excellent, and every performance review was stamped with words like exemplary and leadership potential. But I hated it. Not in a dramatic, throw my briefcase off the rooftop kind of way. More like a steady erosion. Every day, I woke up a little less myself. And one morning, standing at the sink with my toothbrush, I realized I didn't recognize the man in the mirror. That scared me more than unemployment ever could. I wanted to build something real. Something creative. Something that scared me in all the right ways. So I did the unthinkable. I walked away. The trouble began before I'd even packed my office. I told my family at my cousin Derek's birthday dinner, a half-tipsy announcement over lukewarm pasta. I thought maybe they'd be surprised, curious, maybe even supportive. I got none of that. A startup? My sister Allison said, practically choking on her wine. Doing what? Selling stickers on the internet? It's not stickers, I said evenly. It's a design studio. Branding. Storytelling. Visual identity. Visual what? My uncle said. You're gonna draw logos and hope people pay you. The room erupted. The rest of that evening was a blur of passive-aggressive remarks, eye rolls, and someone asking me if I was having a midlife crisis at 30. That phrase stuck with me. What followed were weeks of calls, lectures, and interventions disguised as family dinners. I became the cautionary tale. The man who left a 6-figure job to play entrepreneur. One by one, they pulled away, not just emotionally, but financially. My parents cut off the small monthly stipend they'd given me since grad school. Until you come to your senses. Allison stopped returning my calls altogether. I wasn't chasing a pipe dream. I had a plan. I had skills. I just didn't have them with me anymore. But I was determined to prove them wrong. The first trouble showed up not in a dramatic failure, but in silence. 3 weeks into launching my design studio, just me, a rented desk in a shared co-working space, and a MacBook running on prayers, I realized how loud it was when no one believed in you. I had a beautiful website. A solid pitch. A few designs I was genuinely proud of. And not a single client. I was living off my savings, which were already whispering warnings by mid-October. I ate canned soup and instant ramen. My apartment had a thermostat I couldn't afford to touch and a neighbor who practiced electric guitar at 2 a.m. badly. But none of that rattled me as much as the quiet. Every day, I refreshed my inbox hoping for inquiries that never came. I sent cold emails to startups, authors, coffee shops, anyone who might need branding. Most never replied. A few did, just to say no. One guy asked if I'd design his logo for free. For exposure. I laughed until I saw he was serious. Still, I kept showing up. Every morning at 7, I sat at my little desk and worked like I had 10 clients demanding results. I redesigned fake brands just to stay sharp. I studied marketing until my eyes burned. I posted my work online, shouted into the void, and hoped someone, anyone, was listening. Then, one night, the silence broke. It was a small message in my inbox, just a few lines from a woman named Carla. She ran a small eco-friendly soap company in Vermont, and needed help with a rebrand. She'd seen my post on a local entrepreneur forum. She said my style was raw, authentic, and different. She asked if I could design her logo and packaging. The budget? Barely enough to cover rent. But it was something. I said yes before she could change her mind. Carla's project turned into more than a paycheck. It became proof. The first flicker of light in a long, dark tunnel. She loved the results. Posted about me on Instagram. Tagged me in her story. 2 days later, I got another email. Then 3 more the week after. Small jobs, yes, but they came with momentum. The silence was fading. But the noise from my family? That was just starting to change. The more traction I gained, the louder my family got, but not in the way I hoped. Carla's project led to a boutique tea company in Oregon, then a fitness coach in Colorado. My calendar filled with modest but steady work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was growing. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe. I thought maybe, just maybe, my family would come around. Instead, Thanksgiving happened. We were gathered at my parents' house, the same place where I'd blown out birthday candles and suffered through awkward middle school photos. But that year, everything felt colder. Not the weather. The people. Dinner started with Allison's latest promotion story, something about managing a new team at her bank, and my mother beaming like she'd birthed the CEO of the universe. When the conversation finally turned to me, it wasn't a question. It was a statement. A warning, really? You know, my father said. You can still go back. I paused. Go back where? He speared a piece of turkey like it had offended him. To real work. To a real job. I have a job, I said. A business, actually. Allison snorted. You mean the hobby? My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I make money, I said steady. I pay my rent. I'm booked for the next 2 months. That's cute, she said, sipping wine. But you could be making 3 times that in corporate. It's not about the money, I replied. Well, it should be, my father cut in. Because your mother and I are not going to bail you out when this collapses. I never asked you to, I said, my voice flat. Not once. That's when my uncle, who had been quiet most of the evening, looked up and said, You used to be smart, Josh. Now you're just idealistic. And I think that's the moment something broke in me. Not snapped, just cracked wide open. I stood up slowly. My chair scraped the floor in a way that silenced the table. Thanks for dinner, I said. You're leaving? My mom asked, shocked. I have to be up early, I said. Some of us work weekends. I grabbed my coat and walked out. No one followed. No one called. And for the first time, I realized I didn't need them to. But I would remember. After Thanksgiving, I stopped hoping they'd come around. I stopped checking my phone for "proud of you" texts that were never coming. Something shifted in me that night, like I'd buried the old map I'd been following and decided to draw my own from scratch. Winter came hard. The radiator in my apartment gave out for 2 weeks, and I worked in fingerless gloves and a second-hand hoodie. My bank balance hovered at barely breathing. But the jobs kept trickling in. Then came the call that changed everything. A writer I'd done a book cover for, simple project, maybe $300, mentioned me to a friend who was launching a podcast. That friend ended up being the creative director of a rising media startup. They needed a brand overhaul. I pitched them like my life depended on it. Because, frankly, it kind of did. 3 weeks later, I had a $10,000 contract. The biggest win of my life. From there, things snowballed. The startup loved my work. They referred me to others. Suddenly, I wasn't just getting by. I was choosing which clients to take. I hired a friend from college to help with admin, moved into a better apartment with real heat. Built a brand that people recognized. By the end of that year, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. One afternoon, I got an email from a major design blog asking to feature my work. A week later, Forbes emailed. A month after that, an investor reached out. And in all of that noise, all the new clients and interviews and congratulations, I noticed something else starting to creep back in. My family. It started with little things, likes on Instagram posts, a heart emoji from my mom under a business anniversary photo. Then came a message from Allison. Hey! I saw your article in Business Weekly. That's actually pretty cool. Congrats. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because I remembered every scoff, every dinner where I sat there being picked apart like the casserole, every lecture that ended in, "We just don't want to see you waste your potential." But I smiled. Because now they were watching. And I wasn't done writing this chapter yet. By the time spring rolled around, my business had evolved from a gamble into something with structure, systems, even staff. I had 3 part-timers working under me remotely, clients booked 6 months out, and a brand presence that, somehow, had become a small movement. And that's when the family started resurfacing, like algae after a long winter. The first was my cousin Ben. He messaged me on LinkedIn with all the subtlety of a crowbar. "Hey bro! Saw the article on your startup. Huge congrats, man. Actually, I've been looking to transition into design. Mind if I shoot you my resume?" Ben. The same cousin who, 2 years earlier, at Grandma's 80th, had toasted to people who aren't afraid to dream, but also know when to wake up. Everyone laughed. I just swallowed my wine and smiled. I didn't respond right away. I let it sit for 2 days before sending back. "Appreciate the note, Ben. Unfortunately, we're looking for candidates with proven industry experience. Wishing you all the best on your career pivot." Professional. Polite. Unmistakably cold. He never replied. A week later, I got a text from my mother. That in itself was nothing new. She'd been sending carefully crafted messages every other Sunday since the Forbes article came out. "Josh, your father and I were just talking about how proud we are of what you've built. Truly. Hope you're taking care of yourself." But this one came with an attachment, a photo of my parents standing in front of a local community center, with a caption. "Would love to see if your company would be interested in sponsoring the summer fair. We know how much you've always loved giving back." Giving back. Right. I stared at the photo for a long time. My dad was smiling the same smile he wore when he said, "You'll come crawling back within a year." My mom held a donation clipboard like she was posing for charity, not asking for it. I texted back one sentence. "Happy to help, with a copy of Dad's quote from Thanksgiving printed on every flyer, 'You're throwing your life away.' Let me know if that works." No reply. Then came the boldest one, Allison. She called me out of nowhere one evening, just as I was finishing a pitch deck. I almost declined it, but something told me to answer. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was instinct. "Hey," she said like we'd spoken last week. "Listen, I was wondering, do you have any job openings? Things at the bank have been rough. Layoffs." It took everything in me not to laugh. "I'll be honest," I said. "We're hiring. But you're not a good fit." A pause. "Seriously?" "Seriously." She gave a little bitter laugh. "So this is your revenge tour, huh?" "No," I said. "Revenge would be putting you in an unpaid internship and having you fetch coffee while I redesign logos in silence. This is just boundaries." She hung up. And I felt something lift. Not joy, not smugness. Just clarity. It wasn't about vengeance. Not anymore. It was about remembering who I was when no one else did. The kid who stayed late in his room sketching logos on napkins. The man who ate canned soup in silence. The founder who kept going when the world bet against him. I wasn't their cautionary tale anymore. I was the story they'd tell at parties, edited, of course. Smoothed over, with all the shameful lines cut out. But I remembered. And I intended to keep remembering. Success has a strange echo. When you fail, it's silent. But when you win, it brings back every voice that told you you'd never make it. By the time year 3 rolled around, I was being asked to speak at conferences. I had a team of 5, an office downtown, and enough cash flow that I no longer flinched at big numbers. I'd gone from pitching myself on Craigslist to turning down clients who couldn't meet our minimum. I bought my first house, nothing extravagant, but bright, clean, and mine. And the day I signed the closing documents, my phone lit up with a familiar name. Dad. It wasn't a call. Just a text. One line. "Proud of you, son." I sat there in the parking lot, thumb hovering over the reply button. For once, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. It felt rehearsed, like something he'd practiced in the mirror. Like if he said it now, after the awards, the interviews, the house, I'd forget the look in his eyes when he told me I was wasting my life. I didn't reply. A week later, they invited me to dinner. We just want to catch up, my mom had said. It's been too long. I went. Not because I wanted reconciliation. I just wanted to see if they'd bring it up. All of it. They didn't. Not the mockery. Not the years of silence. Not Thanksgiving. Just smiles and casserole. Allison was there too. Her new job at a marketing firm had clearly knocked her down a few pegs, but she still spoke with the confidence of someone used to people clapping at her resume. At one point during dinner, she leaned in and said, "It's honestly inspiring what you've done. I mean, most people would have given up." I looked at her for a long second. "You mean most people did give up?" I said. "You included." She froze, the wine glass halfway to her mouth. "I remember what you said," I continued, my tone calm. "I remember all of it." Allison opened her mouth, probably to tell me I was being dramatic. But I kept going. "I'm not angry. Not anymore. But I'm also not going to pretend like I imagined it." The table went quiet. My mother gave a tight smile. "We all said things back then. That was a tough time." "No," I said. "You said things? I built something. There's a difference." My father cleared his throat, reaching for his napkin. "Son, we're trying to move forward. Then start by acknowledging where we've been." No one spoke. I stood up, gently placed my fork on the plate, and smiled. "Thanks for dinner." As I walked out, I heard Allison whisper, "He hasn't changed at all." She was right. I hadn't. But they had. They used to see a failure. Now, they saw a future they wanted to be a part of. The only difference? I finally had the power to say no. It was early fall when the next one came, subtle, almost forgettable. An email. Subject line: application for open role, marketing coordinator. From a Hannah B. I almost deleted it without reading. But something made me open the file. And there it was, full name, Hannah Bethany Miller. My second cousin. The one who'd once told me, at Christmas, that some people just aren't cut out for real jobs. She had laughed while stuffing deviled eggs into her mouth, the room around her erupting like she told the best joke of the night. Apparently, Hannah had decided now that the cousin with pipe dreams was the one she'd like to work for. Her resume was average. Her cover letter? Full of buzzwords she didn't understand. And yet she had the gall to end it with, "I've always admired your drive and creativity." Always. I read that line 3 times. I didn't feel anger. Just disbelief, and something like amusement. So I responded. Polite. Brief. "Dear Hannah, thank you for your application. After careful consideration, we've decided not to move forward. As a courtesy, please find attached a screenshot from Christmas Eve, 2019, your message that read, 'Maybe one day you'll grow up and stop chasing rainbows. Hope this helps jog your memory. All the best. Josh.'" She didn't reply. But her mother did. A voicemail. Choked with fake sweetness. "Josh, sweetheart, I don't know why you'd hold on to something so silly. We're family. Don't let an old joke ruin opportunities." I saved the voicemail. Never responded. Because these weren't just jokes. These were anchors they tied to my ankles while I tried to swim. Now that I'd reached the shore, they wanted a ride back in my boat. But I was building a fleet. Not a ferry. And I remembered every single one of them. It was just after New Year's when the call came, not a text this time, but a real call. My mother. I let it ring twice before answering. "Happy New Year," I said flatly. There was a pause. Then, "Your father and I were wondering if you'd have time to talk." That tone. Warm, tentative. Like I hadn't spent 2 years being iced out of every family event, ridiculed over mashed potatoes, and told I was wasting my potential. Still, curiosity won out. We met at a coffee shop, neutral ground. They looked smaller than I remembered. My mother had that practiced, overly maternal smile, and my dad sat stiffly, nursing a black coffee like it might defend him. They didn't even waste time with pleasantries. So, my father said, clearing his throat, we've run into a bit of a financial issue. I blinked. Go on. We're underwater on the mortgage, my mother added quickly. The interest rate adjustment hit harder than we expected. And with Dad's consulting slowing down. You want money, I said. A beat of silence. We were hoping, she corrected gently, that maybe your company might be interested in an investment property. You could buy the house. Lease it back to us. We'd pay monthly. Everyone wins. I nearly laughed. The same house, I said slowly, where you told me I was throwing my life away? My dad looked down at his cup. My mother's smile twitched. People say things when they're scared. I leaned back in my chair. I wasn't scared. I believed in myself. You were just too proud to admit you didn't. They didn't respond. I won't buy your house, I said calmly. I won't bail you out. And I certainly won't pretend the last 3 years didn't happen. Josh, my dad began, but I raised a hand. I'll give you one thing, I said. One piece of advice. Sell the house. Get something smaller. Live within your means. And remember next time, you don't get to spit on people and then ask them for an umbrella when it rains. I stood up and left them sitting there, quiet and still, like ghosts waiting for someone to tell them where they went wrong. I didn't turn back. Not because I was angry, but because I knew if I gave them even an inch, they'd rewrite the whole history. But I remembered. And that was enough. Spring came with celebration. My company had just signed its biggest client to date, a national brand with a household name. I hosted a small dinner party at my new place. Friends, colleagues, a few mentors. Laughter echoed through the rooms I once imagined from my shoebox apartment. And then, uninvited, Allison showed up. She stood at my door in a stiff blazer, holding a bottle of overpriced wine and that same smile she used to wear when correcting my life choices. I heard the news, she said. Thought I'd stop by. Thought maybe we could start over? I stepped aside and let her in. She mingled. She laughed. She introduced herself like a long-lost ally, not the sister who once called me delusional. I watched her try to impress people who already knew the real story. Toward the end of the night, she pulled me aside. I'm serious, Josh, she said. I want to be part of this. What you've built, it's incredible. I'd love to help. I met her eyes and simply said, You had your chance. She opened her mouth, but I was already turning away. No anger. No drama. Just truth. Because some bridges don't need to burn. They need to be left behind untouched. While you keep walking forward.